This week in America, the mayor of Newark got arrested for protesting ICE. Janine Piro got promoted from courtroom screamer to federal prosecutor, and Trump's latest move, cutting PBS and NPR like Elmo says something personal. Oh, and the Pentagon is banning DEI books. That's right. The military said no more inclusion, but we're totally down to include another $400 billion in weapons funding. That makes sense, but wait, it gets better. Across the pond, the UK and US just dropped a new post-tariff trade deal because apparently America First now includes British beef. In India and Pakistan, they're back on the brink over airstrikes because the 1940s called and said, run it back. In case all that wasn't wild enough, the Vatican elected a new pope and he's American. I repeat, America is exporting popes now. Probably came with a signing bonus and a Netflix deal. Meanwhile, celebrities played dress up at the Met Gala because nothing says in-state capitalism like $30,000 tickets to cosplay colonialism. And at the box office, Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan gave us Sinners, a black horror film about demons, juke joints, and grief, which somehow still feels less terrifying than this week's headlines. So yeah, that's where we are. Welcome to the Adonis Black Show, the only news show where we laugh to keep from crying, and let's talk about it. Let's start local, because when mayors are getting cuffed like they're starring in Law and Order, something is off. This week, Newark Mayor Ras Baraka was arrested while protesting the construction of a new ICE detention center in the city. That's right, an elected official was zip-tied by law enforcement for protesting other law enforcement. Baraka joined demonstrators who are furious about the Trump administration pushing forward with a $250 million immigration detention facility right in a densely populated, largely black and brown community. The project's already controversial, but Baraka's arrest sent the whole situation viral. Not just because he's the mayor, but because it proves something even louder. Local leaders have less power than a private prison lobby. Let's be real, this isn't about order or illegal immigration. It's about using detention as business. The more people you lock up, the more money somebody makes. It's taxpayer-funded oppression with a profit margin. And for all the law and order folks, look, where was that energy when federal ICE agents arrested a mayor who was peacefully protesting? Oh, right. I forgot. Order only matters when you're the one giving the orders. The irony? Baraka wasn't just protesting the center. He was trying to stop it from opening across the street from a school, you know, for kids. But sure, let's talk about protecting families. The real crime isn't civil disobedience. It's that building cages is still a bipartisan business plan. Next up, the Trump administration tried to fire tens of thousands of federal employees, and the judge had to step in and say, sir, you still need Congress for that. Look, last week, a federal judge blocked Trump's plan to execute mass layoffs across the federal workforce, calling it an overreach of executive authority. Translation, you can't treat the entire government like a failed casino. This was part of a broader push by Trump's team to deconstruct the administrative state, which is just a fancy way of saying, let's get rid of experts and replace them with people who watched House of Cards once and think they get it. The administration claimed the layoffs were about efficiency. But if efficiency means gutting FEMA, the EPA, and the Department of Education mid-disaster, maybe it's not the kind of streamlining that we want. Here's the kicker. Trump's executive order tried to reclassify civil service under something called Schedule F, stripping them of job protection so they could be fired for, you know, having thoughts or science degrees or empathy. The judge shut it down for now, but you can feel the warning shot. This isn't just about shrinking government. It's about turning it into a loyalty test. Less expertise, more cronies. Kind of like Russia. Anyway, imagine being a park ranger and waking up to find out your job is too woke for national security. That's not reform. That's revenge governance. And thank God for checks and balances, because left unchecked, we'd be one press release away from Trump trying to privatize the moon. And he could probably get away with it after the Gulf of America thing. Yeah, okay. So this weekend, what year is it and who let this happen? President Trump appointed former Fox News host Jeanine Pirro as interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Yes, that Janine Piro. The one who made her name yelling at the camera like it owed her money. The one whose courtroom experience now takes a backseat to a decade of primetime tantrums on Fox. She's gone from opening statement to opening federal cases? Now, look, technically, Pirro has a legal background. She was a judge and a district attorney, but let's be honest, that was before she became a one-woman hype machine for MAGA grievance politics. This appointment isn't about justice. It's about turning the Department of Justice into a live taping of The Five. The role she's stepping into is massive. Prosecutorial oversight for Washington, D.C., a hub for political investigation. So we're expected to believe someone who once called for jailing Hillary Clinton on air is going to approach her work with objectivity. But maybe Hillary Clinton should have been jailed. Can I say that? Because I'm critiquing her for saying... I don't know, man. If only Trump was actually trying to restore law and order instead of making prosecution a reality show, maybe I could get behind it. Next thing you know, cases will come with ad breaks. And let's just be real. If the law is supposed to be blind, why does it keep getting new contact lenses every time Trump's in office? This isn't just a controversial pick, it's a message. We're not just ignoring the norms, we're lighting them on fire and calling it ratings. And they do get their ratings. God damn, it's working. Alright, next up in the ongoing war on literacy. The Pentagon just ordered military bases to remove all materials promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and gender ideology from their libraries. Yeah, not grenades, not extremist propaganda. They probably need grenades though, but they got rid of books about inclusion. Apparently, the art of war is fine, but the art of not being a racist is where they draw the line. This decision comes as part of a broader Trump-era crackdown on what they call woke ideology in the military. Because when you're losing wars overseas, the real threat is clearly pronouns. The irony? The military itself is one of the most diverse institutions in the country. It recruits from every race, class, and background. But now they're being told, thanks for your service, just don't ask and don't read. This is about erasure. You can't build unity by suppressing identity. And you definitely don't create strength by pretending systemic inequality is a theory, not a reality. Plus, let's talk about readiness. You know what actually hurts morale? Not understanding the people you serve alongside. If you're more threatened by a book on unconscious bias than actual insurgency, maybe the problem isn't the reading list. Like, we trust you with missile systems, but please don't read about empathy. That stuff's dangerous. At this point, the real question is, are they fighting wokeism or just fighting the idea of growing up? Probably the second thing, right? I don't know anymore. I just report the news, guys. In this week's episode of Let's Cancel Something That Actually Helps People, President Trump signed an executive order to eliminate all federal funding for NPR and PBS. Because when you're running the country like it's your third bankruptcy, the real enemy is always Big Bird. I thought you guys knew that. We learned that in Economics 101. According to the administration, public broadcasting is biased, elitist, and woke. But let's cut through the noise. This isn't about fiscal responsibility. The budget for public broadcasting is less than 0.1% of federal spending. That's like yelling at someone for stealing a fry while somebody's emptying a safe in the back. PBS and NPR reach millions of people, especially in rural areas, providing everything from educational programming to life-saving emergency coverage. But Trump's message is clear. If you're not entertainment, you're expendable. It's about silencing voices that don't fit the script, voices that explain nuance, offer context, or let people talk without yelling, which in today's political ecosystem might as well be communism. We're not losing Sesame Street. We're losing the last street in media that doesn't come with a subscription, a side of spin, or a 6-minute ad for crypto. So congratulations, America. We're now a country that funds tear gas faster than reading Rainbow. I hope you're proud of yourselves, because, God damn it. Meanwhile, on the international front, India and Pakistan are once again flirting with global catastrophe. This week, India launched airstrikes inside Pakistani territory, retaliating after a deadly terror attack in Kashmir. Pakistan, not to be outdone, vowed swift and equal retaliation. Because apparently we're doing Cold War fan fiction now. This is not a minor border dispute. It's two nuclear-armed nations playing chicken, and the rest of the world is just sitting back like, y'all good? What makes this more disturbing is the pattern. Every few years, something flares up between these two, and the global community acts shocked. Like we didn't leave that pot on simmer since 1947. And here's the part no one talks about. Both governments are using nationalism as a political fuel source. India's got elections coming up, Pakistan's dealing with instability, and nothing boosts approval ratings like saber rattling and airstrikes. But let's be clear. This is not a show of strength. This is mutually assured stupidity. And if things spiral, the whole world pays for two governments trying to flex instead of fix. Thought we left that in 2024. It's 2025. We've got AI, 3D printed houses, and billionaires in space. Maybe it's time we stop solving old problems with new bombs. But what do I know about complicated borders created by the British decades ago that continues to be a consistent source of conflict? I didn't say anything, Israel. Gee. In news that sounds like the setup to a punchline, America now has a pope. Yes, for the first time in history. The Vatican elected a North American cardinal, Robert Prevost, as Pope Leo XIV, which means somewhere in Illinois, someone's grandma is calling the Vatican saying, "That's my baby." Actually, no, Prevost is actually from Chicago, but he has spent years in Peru and Rome doing a kind of quiet, serious, theological work that rarely makes headlines, which makes him a wild contrast to everything else we've been exporting lately. In a moment of actual diplomacy, yes, it still happens. The US and UK signed a new post-tariff trade deal this week. The deal rolls back tariffs on British steel, aluminum, and car exports, while easing up on US ethanol and beef heading to the UK. Because nothing says economic recovery like slightly cheaper beef and moderately friendlier metal. Yo, it's been hailed as a win-win, but let's be honest, it's more like we both messed up. And now we're pretending we didn't situation. These tariffs were a Trump-era relic born from a trade war where everyone brought knives to a spreadsheet fight. Now the spin is all about rebuilding relationships and mutual prosperity, which is political code for voters are tired of paying $7 for imported cheese. But what's wild is how this whole drama proved that when tariffs hit, it's not just about foreign policy. It's about your grocery bill, your job, and whether your cousin in Liverpool can still afford a Mustang. And if the UK thinks it's winning because they got their beef back, just wait till they taste it. God, we still trying to get our food regulated. Look, the point is, even allies get petty, but at least this time they picked reconciliation over revenge. Is that a feel-good story? Is that feel-good enough for y'all? I don't know if that works for it. I don't know if we have feel-good stories this week. Well, not yet. Look, this past week, workers across the globe hit the streets for May Day, also known as International Workers' Day, aka the day the world collectively says maybe we shouldn't be poor and exhausted. From Paris to Manila to New York, protests erupted over low wages, unsafe conditions, rising costs of living, and in some countries, straight up exploitation dressed in business casual. In France, the marches turned fiery, literally, because if there's one thing the French don't play about, it's retirement and revolutions they love. In Italy, it was labor unions. In the US, it was a mix of fast food workers, educators, and labor organizers demanding fair pay in an economy that swears is doing great unless you check your bank account. It's wild that in 2025, people still have to beg for the basics. Healthcare, housing, paid time off. These aren't luxuries unless you live in America, but the system treats them like iPhone features. You want job security? It's part of the deluxe plan. And while some governments try to ignore the protests, others crack down hard because nothing says freedom like riot gear at a labor march. Bottom line, workers are loud, organized, and fed up. And if the people in charge aren't paying attention, they will be very soon. And now for the Met Gala, aka the Hunger Games of fashion, where billionaires and pop stars gather to celebrate costume, while the rest of us celebrate getting rent in on time. This year's theme, time is a construct, which is ironic because time stood still watching people spend $30,000 a ticket to wear outfits that look like they lost a bet with a Pinterest board. Jenna Ortega wore a 19th century morning gown dipped in glitter. Rihanna looked like a... Lord have mercy. Rihanna looked like a chandelier that filed for emancipation, and A$AP Rocky, he pulled up dressed like he just inherited a steamboat. And while the outfits were wild, what's wilder is the disconnect. Outside the Met, protests, wage strikes, and rising food insecurity. Inside, gold leaf manicures and custom corsets molded to the curvature of audacity. Call it art, call it fashion. Just don't ever call me about this ever again. And now to close with some black brilliance. Sinners, the new horror film from Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan, isn't just breaking box office records. It's breaking patterns. Set in 1930s Mississippi, the film follows twin brothers Smoke and Stack as they return home to open a juke joint, only to find something supernatural, sinister, and all too familiar lurking in the woods. On paper, it's a horror story. On screen, it's a history lesson wrapped in dread. But here's what makes Sinners different. It's terrifying in a way that feels ancestral. Coogler and Jordan aren't just scaring us with demons, they're haunting us with legacy. That juke joint is not just a setting, it's a symbol of black resistance, joy, and survival in a world that tried to kill you for laughing too loud. The cinematography feels spiritual. The sound design punches. And the fact that this movie made $63 million in its opening weekend tells you everything you need to know. People are hungry for stories that feel true, even when they're fictional. The IMAX viewing just got extended because of rising demand, so shout out to them. And shout out to the production designer Hannah Beachler, who brought 1930s Black Mississippi to life without inducing traumatic reactions. This is what happens when you give black artists the budget, the freedom, and the mic. They don't just make hits, they make mirrors. So go see Sinners, because the scariest thing about the movie is how familiar it feels. So to recap, mayors are getting arrested for protecting their cities, books are getting banned by the Pentagon, and the Pope is now American. Which means somewhere, someone's already pitching a Vatican meets Vegas reality show. And while the elite were cosplaying at the Met Gala, real people were marching for their basic rights. And Sinners reminded us that horror doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a flag. This episode wasn't just a recap of the week. It was a mirror of what we're going through, the chaos we're seeing. That's not dysfunction, that's design. And it's something that I want everybody to understand as they watch the news and watch all these things happen. These things aren't random. But the truth, we're still here. Loud, smart, funny, and impossible to ignore. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, remember, they want you confused, tired, and disconnected. Don't give them the satisfaction. Like, subscribe, share it with someone who's this close to quitting the group chat. And as always, this is the Adonis Black Show, the only news show where we laugh to keep from crying. See you next episode.